right, well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Happy to be here and doing a webinar with you guys. I believe there's probably a way, there's a chat window. I think you guys can probably type questions into that if you have them during the presentation. I'll try to keep an eye on that, maybe Bill will too, and answer your questions as they come up or at the end if we need to. A couple things I want to cover today.
I'll be happy to monitor that for you.
Perfect, thank you, Bill. I'll give you a real quick introduction to Atlona, then I want to jump on and we'll talk about some important steps in installing 4K. Since all of our products are 4K capable, it's important that we understand the technology real well. And then, as Bill mentioned, we'll go in and cover the extender line. And then if you guys are available, hopefully next week, next Tuesday, a week from today, we'll do a second part to this webinar, and that will be on our matrix switches, along with 4K and audio solutions with the matrix switch as well. All right, let's get started here. Real briefly here, just let me tell you about Atlona, what we call the Atlona Advantage, reasons that we feel we're the best company to do business with. And that is because we design our products around value engineering. What that means is we design for 80% of the applications out there. We're not a company that's going to build a product to do everything for everything you could ever want. There are companies that do that. That's not Atlona. We provide the right features, the right solutions at the right price point. So value-added product that fits the majority of what you're going to run into out there. We also have something that we like to call control freedom. It means our products are designed to integrate with any control system out there via IR, RS, 232, or IP. We also offer complete support. That's technical, sales, that's pre-sale support when you're designing a job. It also includes our design services, next day replacement on warranted products, 7-day-a-week, 365-day support, and 10-year warranty on all of our products. Probably the best warranty in the industry right now. And then don't forget training resources. I'll throw this slide up at the very end at AtlonaAcademy.com. Great place to get all of your training needs. All right, so let's jump in and talk a little bit about 4K. There's 5 points I want to touch on. Quickly, there'll be 4K resolution, bandwidth requirements for 4K, cable limitations, 4K content, and finally we'll wrap up with security, HDCP 2.2. So first thing we got to know is, what is 4K resolution? Well, 4K resolution is an image that is 4,096 pixels wide by 2,060 pixels vertical. And when you multiply these two numbers together, we see there are more than 8.8 million pixels of information on the screen. That's a 4K image. Now, what is the aspect ratio of that 4K image? And to get aspect ratio, we divide the horizontal resolution by the vertical resolution, and we see that 4K has an aspect ratio of 1.9 to 1, or 17 by 9. However, keep in mind, all of the flat panel displays that we hang in everybody's homes and offices are 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So what happens when we put a 17 by 9 image onto a 16 by 9 screen? We get gray bars on the top and the bottom, which nobody wants after they just spent all that money on a 4K display. Don't want to see the gray bars. So in order to correct for that, when 4K first came out, the industry released another version of 4K called UHD or UltraHD, which is a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. And it has a resolution that is 3,840 pixels wide, but has the exact same vertical resolution of the full 4K, 2160. And when you multiply these two numbers together, we see there's nearly 8.3 million pixels of information on the screen. So close to as much as we saw with a full 4K, but we're missing a little on the horizontal resolution. In fact, we're missing 7%. 7% of the horizontal image was removed to fit the 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So in other words, if a movie, for example, was shot in the native full 4K 17 by 9 aspect ratio, 7% of that horizontal image would be chopped off, maybe 3.5% on each edge, and that would give us Ultra HD, which is the consumer format. It's the format most people are talking about when they say 4K today. When you see 4K advertised, you'll see Ultra HD or UHD usually written on a box or in marketing ads somewhere. They're referring to this resolution, the 3840, not the full 4096 horizontal. So in comparison, here's a quick chart to kind of give you some idea. Let's start small in the lower left corner there. There's the green rectangle. That's HD, what we call 1080p or high def today. 1920 by 1080, 2 million pixels of information. Before we settled on HD, the green box there, we had 2K, which is that slightly larger red box. Notice it's also 7% wider. So 2K was the first resolution out, but didn't fit the 16:9 aspect ratio, so the industry removed 7% of it, and we settled on HD, 1920 by 1080. So fast forward to today, we have the exact same scenario. You see the blue box being the Ultra HD and the orange box, the full 4K. So today when people say 4K is 4 times HD, it's technically not true. 4K is 4 times 2K, and Ultra HD, which is our consumer version, is 4 times 1080p, which is our consumer high def version today. So now that we know the resolution, the question is how much bandwidth is needed to send those 8.8 million pixels from our source to our display? And our pixel is the only thing that we're concerned with. The answer is no. There's more that goes into the image than just pixels, but I want you to think of pixels as a fixed amount. If we're going to have a 4K image, it's going to have over 8 million pixels in the signal. But there's also some other components. Look at the orange box on the far right there. You have pixels plus the color depth and the refresh rate. So when we're talking about 4K, we need to know how much color is in the image and what the refresh rate of that image is, as well as the pixels. And that together is called the bit rate. You'll oftentimes see bit rate labeled on a cable, an HDMI cable, for example. It'll have a bit rate that'll mean its maximum bandwidth. Now, color is important. It's made up of our 3 primary colors, red, green, and blue, 3 colors of light. As we mix those colors together, we get some nice, very vibrant pictures, which is what we want. The question is, does color take up space, and if so, how much? It does. If you look at the chart here, you see 8-bit color would contain information for 16.7 million colors. A 10-bit color signal would have over 1 billion colors in it, and 12-bit color over 68 billion colors. So it's obviously going to take more bandwidth to send 10-bit than it is 8-bit, and 12-bit more than 10-bit. So the more color we add, the more bandwidth we certainly need. So that's something we need to keep in mind. Remember, I said pixels was a fixed amount. Color is variable. We can change the amount of color. This next point is refresh rate. Refresh rate refers to the number of times each of those pixels are refreshed on the screen per second. The faster we refresh those pixels, the more smooth the image looks. Sometimes you'll see this referred to in terms of a number, like 24 hertz, 30 hertz, 60 hertz. It's also called frame rate. The higher that number, the more times we're refreshing those pixels, the more bandwidth that's needed to continue to send that information faster down the line. Now the question is, in your customer's home, what's more important to them, refresh rate or color? Because both of these are variable. We can alter color, we can alter refresh rate. Pixels are fixed. And to answer this question, you have to look at what's the content. In someone's home, the primary content is going to be movies, sports, television programming. All of these things have motion in them. Given the fact that we're watching motion, we're going to lean towards refresh rate being more important than color. Now, if we were doing a desktop computer application or digital art, or maybe even creating high-end video frame by frame, we might want, where things are more static, we might want to consider color to be more important than refresh rate. But in the customer's home, we lean towards refresh rate, which is why today, the signal that we all transmit, when I say we all, I mean all manufacturers pretty much in the industry, are transmitting 4K resolution, that can be full 4K or UHD, at 60 hertz refresh rate and 8-bit color, which is sometimes referred to as 420, which is a color subsampling algorithm. So we look at the chart here, and let me break this down. This will kind of explain what I'm talking about with 4K. So if you look at the background of the chart, there's a blue triangle that goes basically from left to right. It gets larger. And down at the bottom, I've got written 4K/UHD bitrate 3.5 to 20 gigabits. So remember, pixels are fixed. So as we mix color and refresh rate, we can get different amounts of bandwidth. That's why we can be anywhere between 3.5 and 20 gigabits. Now let's look at the chart up top. The first orange bubble there on the left shows icons for HDMI 1.4 and HDBaseT. These are the two cabling technologies that we're primarily using today and have been for the past few years. With these cabling technologies, we have a maximum bandwidth of 10.2 gigabits. And this is why manufacturers today all have this same format for 4K. You see it in the bottom of the box there. 4K UHD 60 hertz, 420 color. That means 8-bit color. 4K 60 hertz with 8-bit color is the maximum signal we can send and still be under 10.2 gigabits of data. That's why that's the 4K signal that's preferred and used around the industry right now. Is there higher resolution 4K signals available? Yes, absolutely. We can add more color. We can add more refresh rate. As soon as we do that, we go over 10.2 gigabits, and then the signal will not go down the line to the display. In fact, what you'll get generally is no image on the screen, and then you start troubleshooting products only to find out the real problem here is you're sending too much bandwidth down the pipe, and the system can't handle it. Now, there's another technology that you're probably starting to see marketing ads pop up for quite a bit, and that is something called HDR. That's the center box in the screen there. HDR is high dynamic range. It is another technology for adding more color and depth into a picture. If you've had a chance to see HDR, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It looks really good. It almost looks 4K. The reason is HDR can be applied to a 1080p image. It can also be applied to a 4K image to enhance the image, and it looks really good. So there are a lot of manufacturers heavily pushing HDR right now. You see it on displays, especially in department stores, even online. There's even a number of articles out there on it now. So it's important. You're probably going to have customers asking about it. The problem with HDR right now is if you're sending 4K at 60 hertz with 420, and you then apply or turn on the HDR feature, it adds more bandwidth to the signal and takes the total bandwidth to just over 11 gigabits. At that point, the signal will not travel over the HDMI 1.4 connections or the HDBaseT path either. So the HDR cannot be turned on. Now, I will tell you guys this, a little hint, a preview. Hopefully we'll see you at CEDIA this year, but Atlona will be making a big announcement at CEDIA in regards to HR. We will be bringing out a new way of distributing the HDR signal that will work on all of our 4K systems, and Atlona will work to become the leader in HDR distribution. So that's something to look forward going down the road. The key today is that you cable and build your infrastructure properly so you're ready for it when it comes out, and we'll talk about cabling in the next slide. Then over on the far right, the other option is to use HDMI 2.0. So if you have a source that has an HDMI 2.0 output, a display with an HDMI 2.0 input, with the proper cabling infrastructure between them, you'll have a maximum bandwidth of 18 gigabits, in which case you could send a full 4K resolution onto that display. So there's a couple options out there, but remember today, we're really kind of limited in working around that 10.2 gigabit mark. With the HDMI 2.0, that does not transmit over HDBaseT currently, so you're limited to the length of the HDMI cable, which is probably about a max of 25 feet or so. So it's real short distances. But if you're distributing around a home or in a larger environment, you're going to need HDBaseT, and you have that limitation of 10.2 gigabits right now. Okay, so looking at cable, the recommended cable for HDBaseT is Cat 6A. Hopefully you guys are pulling it. It's the third piece of wire down. It's the dark blue case around it. Cat 6A is what you should be pulling. With Cat 6A, you'll get the maximum performance out of the HDBaseT processors. That's either 328 feet on the larger piece or 230 on the smaller piece. We'll look at those next. If you can pull shielded cable, that's recommended. It doesn't give you more distance, but it offers you better protection on the job site for your cable and for that signal. Can you use Cat 6 or Cat 5e, particularly if this is a retrofit job? The answer is yes. However, you'll get shorter performance distance out of those cables. Let me show you a chart here. There are two types of HDBaseT products. There's the full HDBaseT, which uses the Class A chipset. There's the HDBaseT Lite, which uses the Class B. We'll start with the full HDBaseT on the left here. If your signal is 1080p and you have Cat5e, Cat6, or Cat6a, you get the full 328 feet of performance out of that application. However, if your signal type increases to 4K and you have Cat5e or Cat6 cable, notice you'll drop from 328 feet down to a max of 230 feet of performance. You'll still get the full 328 feet of performance if you pull a Cat6a cable with the 4K signal. Now move over to the chart on the right. This is the Class B chipset, the HDBaseT Lite. With a 1080p signal, with Cat6a, you get the full performance, 230 feet. With Cat5e or Cat6, you get performance of 197 feet. And with the 4K signal, look what happens here. If you've got Cat5e or Cat6, your performance is going to drop down to 115 feet only. So here's my suggestion. If this is a retrofit type of job and you have Cat5e cable in the wall, for example, sell the Class A HDBaseT product. It's a little more expensive, but it's going to guarantee you double the performance distance, especially if you don't know how long that wire is in the wall. This is going to help ensure that your 4K signal gets displayed properly on the display. All right, real quickly here, let's talk about content. There's not a lot of content out there for 4K yet, but we're seeing more of it. Things that are accelerating adoption will be better use of compression algorithms like H.265, more affordable 4K recording devices like small camcorders, even some of the bigger studios like ESPN using 4K cameras for live events. The advent of HDMI 2.0 and a wider bandwidth spectrum is going to help. Also just more displays hitting the market, plus programming like Netflix, which has a handful of 4K titles out there that we're starting to see and stream, although there's still issues, I think, with compression there. So we look to see that get better over the next few months to a year as well. One thing to caution you guys on, you're going to see HD Blu-ray players hitting the market real soon. There's already some coming out. With the HD Blu-ray player, they generally all come with this HDR feature that we talked about earlier. So here's the thing. If you've installed a system for your customer already, and they happen to pick up a 4K Blu-ray player on their own, bring it home and plug it in, and then it doesn't work, then they call you. The reason it probably doesn't work is inside of the Blu-ray 4K Blu-ray player settings, they likely have HDR turned on and probably 10-bit color as well. Once those two features are turned on, you're going to be way over the 10.2 gigabit bandwidth, and those features are going to have to be turned off, which would probably upset the customers because they just spent money on a 4K Blu-ray player so they could have HDR, and it's not going to work unless they have an HDMI 2.0 display and they can connect a short HDMI cable between the Blu-ray and the display on the wall, and then it would work. Otherwise, you're going to need to wait a little bit longer until we see some new things releasing, one of which will be a software system that will allow for basically downsampling of the HDR signal so that it can be played on a non-HDR display. But for now, be cautious of that. You could see that out there in the market as well. And the last piece on HDMI is security. HDCP, we know this was brought out when HD came out, 8-10 years ago. HDCP was put in place to prevent the piracy of high-def material. Well, 4K out, the Hollywood industry wants to protect the piracy of 4K material now as well. So they've released a new security algorithm, and this is on a physical chip that's built into the product, which means current products that are HDCP 1.4 are not upgradable to HDCP 2.2. So if your customer has a 4K display hanging on their wall, but it does not have an HDCP 2.2 chip in it, the TV cannot be upgraded and it will not show copyright protected 4K material, which is anything coming out of Hollywood. They would have to replace that display on the wall with a brand new 4K display that has the 2.2 chip in it. In fact, every device in the signal path has to have this chip in it. So the source device, the AVR, if you're using an AVR to break audio out for surround sound, a matrix switch, the receiver for the matrix switch, if you're passing signal through a sound bar before it goes into the TV, all of these devices will need to have the 2.2 chip in it in order for that 4K signal to display on the TV properly. So something to watch out for. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to Atlona, to our pre-sales team. Just call the main number, they're option 3, and we'll help you guys with any decisions or products in case you're looking for information on that. Okay, so that's it on 4K. If you have questions, you can ask and type them into chat or bring them up at the end. Let's talk a little bit about some of the 4K extenders that are out there in the Atlona line. Here's the chart. You'll see there's actually 5 different models of extenders out here. I'm going to start on the left, first one, and we'll go across. The first one, and let me break down the part number here. It says the first one there is UHD EX70 2PS. UHD, remember from earlier, that stands for UltraHD. That means it's a 4K product. EX means it's an extender. 70 means it's 70 meters. And in this case, 2PS means 2 power supplies. So this particular kit, transmitter receiver, needs to be plugged in on both ends, but it will send audio, video, and it is using power over Ether. It is using HDBaseT, so you're getting a good quality signal. This is a low-cost alternative just to get audio, video from one point to another over category cable. The next one over, the UHD EX70, this one uses power over Ethernet, so you need to power the transmitter, but the receiver, which sits behind the TV, does not need to be plugged in. It will receive its power over the Ethernet cable via power over Ethernet. Also 70 meters of distance. Next one, the EX70C. In this part number, C stands for control. So this is a 70 meter switch, uses power over Ethernet as well, so the receiver does not need to be plugged in. Notice it's got a couple of these green Phoenix connectors on the back. These allow for bidirectional pass-through of IR and RS-232 commands. That's why the C is there for control. The next one over is the EX100CE. Now we notice a couple things here. This one says 100 in the part number. That means this is 100 meters, which is 328 feet. The previous ones that all said 70 meters, that's 230 feet. So there's a performance difference here. Also, the 100CE has bidirectional control for IR and RS-232. And the E at the end of that part number stands for Ethernet, meaning this device will also pass an Ethernet signal over that category cable, which you notice on the front side of the back side of the jack there, there's a Cat5e out port. That's to go right into the TV to give TV direct connected or hardwired Ethernet right to the display. Rather than using Wi-Fi, this would be for the use of something like a streaming app, say Pandora or Netflix, dedicated right to the TV. In the very last column there, something we'll take a little more in-depth look at, that's a new product that's just released by Atlona called the EX100CEA. So this is just like the previous model, this 100CE, but we added an A to the end of the part to the model number there, which stands for audio. It says an audio return path in it, so we'll take a look at that here in just a second as well. Here's a close-up view on the back of the extenders, the 100CE transmitter and the receiver. These are capable of 4K 60 hertz with 420 color. All of the extenders are. They all will also pass HDCP 2.2. They have the security chip in them. The 12 volt that we use, the IR system we use is 12 volt, so it's standard control system, which means it's going to work with Xantec, RTI, Control 4, Universal Remote Control. All the other standard products that are out there works fine with them. These are each a 1/4 rack width wide, which means you can put 4 of these on a single 1U rack shelf. They fit nicely on there. Notice the firmware port is on the front, which means as an installer, when you walk up to do a firmware update on this, you don't need to pull the rack out to get around to the back of it. You can do a firmware update right from the front. They all use power over Ethernet, which is a 48 volt power signal. Notice the HDBaseT jacks on these are blue. Blue jacks are power over Ethernet. They use the 48 volt. That means because they're 48 volts and they use PoE, that means that they're also compatible with other power over Ethernet-based HDBaseT products in the market. So let's say you had a retrofit job where maybe you're replacing the matrix switch with a new Atlona switch, and you have receivers already installed at the displays that are power over Ethernet-based receivers. They will work with the Atlona matrix switch. Vice versa, the Atlona extenders here would work with another branded switch if need be, as long as they all meet the same 48-volt PoE power requirement. You can also daisy chain up to 4 of these together on a rack shelf and run them off of one power supply, which is a nice feature when you're doing an install because it's going to help keep your racks real nice and neat. One thing that's new for Atlona now is the 100 CE TX. This is the same product we just saw on the last slide. However, this is now being sold as its own part number. There's a SKU just for the transmitter. When would you need this? Let's say you had a projector or a flat panel that had an HDBaseT input directly on it, so you didn't need a receiver. You can use just the transmitter, run HDMI into this transmitter, now send the signal over HDBaseT directly into the display without the need for a receiver. So you can buy just the transmitter as well. And here I mentioned this earlier, we saw it briefly, the CEA, the 100 CEA. This is the full 328 feet HDBaseT performance with control and Ethernet and audio. Notice on both the front and back there's an optical out and then an optical in input on this. Let's look at a diagram here. So in this example, look at the upper right. I've got a smart TV here. This has streaming apps built into it. Let's say we're watching Netflix. Netflix app now makes the TV the source because audio and video are coming in right here. However, I've got surround sound in the room that's being driven by a receiver, which is kept in the rack shelf or maybe an equipment rack in another room or in a closet. How do I get the audio from the TV now back to that amplifier? Up till now, you've had to run a second cable to do that. But with this product here, you can take optical audio out from the display into the receiver that's behind the TV. This will now embed the audio back onto the HDBaseT signal, send it back downstream over the HDBaseT category cable into the transmitter, where it's broken out via optical and can be sent into a local receiver in the rack, which is used to power that surround sound. So that's a real cool product. A lot of dealers have been asking for that, and we've been able to make that. That's out now. You see the link at the bottom. Check out the video online. Go to Atlona.com, product page for this. There's a great video on it that shows you exactly how this product works. Welcome to take a look at that. Now we have another set of extenders that make up our HDVS solutions. These tend to be more of a point-to-point, often for presentations. A lot of our residential customers do a handful of light commercial jobs, and these extenders are really ideal for those light commercial situations. They also interface perfectly with our matrix switchers, as you'll see in next week's webinar too. So there's a couple here. What we're going to look at is the HDVS-150 and 200 series, and then that far right column, the SC500, which is a little condensed version of that, which also has a scaler built into it. So let's start with that one, the HDSC500. This is real small, same size as a little extender would be. This is an all-in-one presentation extender. So this might be used in a small room where I've got a single display and maybe 2 or 3 people are meeting and want to share some information from a source. Could be a laptop, could be a Blu-ray player, something easy like that. The output on this is a single HDMI. See that on the bottom back right there. So that output right to my display. My input, there's 3 different input types on here. I've got an HDMI on the front, an HDMI on the back. I've also got a VGA input with an audio input port next to it, which will embed audio onto that VGA line. So I could have a couple of different sources plugged into this box right here and have a nice little conference going between a couple of people. And for the presenter, there's a couple buttons on the front of this that make it real easy to use. There's an input button right there which allows the presenter to select between those HDMI and VGA sources. There's a display button which allows the presenter to control the display on the wall, and then which toggle it on and off or change inputs on it. And then there's a volume up and down button which allows the presenter to toggle volume up and down. And this box can be programmed via IR, RS-232 to control, or CEC commands to control the display on the wall for power and volume, the TV speakers. It does have a LAN connection, which means this thing can be put on the network, control it over IP or through the web GUI interface. which makes it real nice and easy. Notice there's an audio output connector block on there, so you can run audio directly out to a separate amplifier to power a pair of speakers in the room, plus the RS-232 control. There's also a scaler built into this device. So in addition to just being used as a mini presentation switch, it's also a scaler. So you could actually take one of these in, let's say, a matrix environment where maybe you've got a mix of 1080p TVs with maybe an older 720p display somewhere in there. What will happen is that 720p will force the signal to downscale to 720p, which means the 1080p displays on that matrix network will also get a 720 resolution, which we don't want to do. So you could actually put one of these little scalers behind the 720p display, send 1080p to this scaler. It will then downsample it to 720, proper resolution for that display, and not affect the other 1080p displays that are in the matrix environment. So it's a simple standalone scaler. It works great. It will scale up to 1920 by 1200, which is a 16 by 10 format, or regular high def 1920 by 1080. So a lot of cool options with this piece for very little money. Really cool, powerful device. Here's a quick application design where you can see it being used. You see at the bottom there, I've got control connected to it. I have a laptop connected. I'm feeding out to a projector. I have two more computers connected to the front side of it. And then I'm even using, Atlona sells a small amplifier, the PA100G2 you see at the top of the screen, which will power a pair of speakers. Works great with this product right here. All right, now the HDVS-150, notice it looks very similar to the product we just saw, except in this example, I'm going to assume that we're not in a really small room where I can run an HDMI cable. I'm going to assume the room's a little bit bigger, maybe a classroom or something just of a little more size where I probably need more than a 24 HDMI run. In this case, I want to use HDBaseT. So this is really the exact same product we just saw, but we're separating out this device into two pieces, a transmitter and a receiver, so that we can run the signal a longer distance over HDBaseT. The transmitter is the top piece. Notice there's also a wall plate version of it to the right. Same inputs, two HDMI, a VGA, audio, and presenter still has the option to change input and toggle the display on and off. The bottom box, the receiver, has the output for HDMI, the audio breakout, and has the scaler built in right there. So very simple to use, just a slightly larger application for it. And this is great for 1080p applications, also uses power over Ethernet. So it interfaces real well with the rest of the products in the Atlona line. Actually, here's a more complex diagram showing you how you could use one of these HDVS products with one of our larger CLSO presentation scalers if you happen to do a room that was a little bit bigger, maybe even had multiple displays. So some real cool things you can do with some simple Atlona products. We've also released a new upgraded version of this HDVS product. It's our 200 series, and this does a few more things. It does allow for the transmission of 4K signal. You can see the wall plate now is gone to a 2-gang Decora style wall plate, which is a little more functional in some of your nicer or even residential spaces. Same inputs, two HDMI, VGA, and audio. This device will actually allow you to plug let's say an iPod or an iPhone, for example, into that audio input port and just send audio only to a receiver where audio is then broken out to an amplifier to power a pair of speakers. Same features here. Presenter can control input, volume, and then on the output side, you've got HDMI output. You've got a scaler built in right there. So similar to what we just saw, but really the addition of 4K and a couple of extra soft features, including the 2-gang Decora style plate. Here's a simple application showing how that might work. Here's the transmitter on the left, which is likely going to be maybe at a teacher's desk or a conference room table or in a home, maybe somewhere by where a person's sitting, media location, a theater chair, something like that. Then the receiver is located at the other end of the category cable. And it has the output to audio, video to the display, control to the control processors done here as well. These devices both have LAN ports, which means they sit on the network. You can control this all over IP. There's nice web GUI interfaces to manage both of these devices. So really a cool, powerful device, uses power over Ethernet, so the receiver gets plugged in, which sits up behind the TV or the projector. It sends power over category cable to the transmitter. The transmitter only needs a category cable, and no need for extra power supply at that end. So really cool, simple solution right here. Easy to use, easy to set up. All of these products carry 10-year warranty as well. Another thing you could do, looking at this example here, you could use the first column with the orange header there, HDVS-200 to an HDVS-200RX. That's basically what we just looked at. The second column over there is an HDVS-200 using one of our 100 CE receivers. In this case, the receiver gets plugged in and sends power to the HDVS unit. What's different here? What's different is I'm not using, there's no scaler in the receiver on this one. So it's a little less money, allows for full 4K transmission. This is a great way just to send 4K from an HDVS input, multiple devices, to a single receiver connected to a 4K panel. A little less money and a really kind of slick solution there. This is just a comparison chart showing you some of the differences between the 150 and the 200. The 200 just a bit more robust, a bit more distance, has several more features on it, but both are great options for you to move a signal from one point to another over HDBaseT and allow several different people to interface and share their material with the group. Something else that's new to Atlona that I'd encourage you guys to take a look at is we just released a software program. We call it AMS, Atlona Management System. It's completely free download. You can get it off of our website right now. The AMS is a program that allows you to connect to any Atlona product that's on the IP network. And as you see, almost all of our products now have an Ethernet port on them, which means they sit on the standard IP network. Now, remember, you're sending audio video over HDBaseT, but you're controlling all the products on the Ethernet network. And so this software lets you see all of the products through one single interface. Even allows you to remotely from your office to VPN into your customer site and see all of the products in the home or in the office. You can reboot them remotely. You can do firmware updates remotely. You can push programming down remotely. You can do health monitoring, maybe even set yourself up with some kind of a recurring monthly fee that you receive from your customers to be able to monitor their system remotely to make sure everything is up to date and running and be able to quickly assess and maybe even fix problems before they arise without ever dispatching a truck to the customer site. So take a look at the Atlona management software. It's a great tool, easy to use, and I would encourage you also to jump onto AtlonaAcademy.com and log into our training portal. If you don't have an ID already, sign up for one. There's a course in there that shows you exactly how to use the AMS software. You can also go through Atlona's certification courses online. You can become Atlona certified. All of our certification courses also carry continuing education credits for both CEDIA and Infocom in case you're participating in those. On the Academy site, you'll also find over 150 different videos and webinars that we do and record, as well as our content library, which contains all of our white papers and all of our application designs for our most commonly used products you'll find out there as well. There's just a quick guide showing you how the Academy is set up. It's very much like a college curriculum. You take 100 level courses, you become certified on foundational technology. You take 200 level courses, you become certified on Atlona products. And then we offer some more advanced 300 level courses if you want to go beyond and get into selling and application design as well. On the application design tab, you will see drawings like the one here, which are our application designs. We show you exactly what the products are, how they all connect together. You also will see our connection diagrams, which give you sort of block layouts and show you from an installer standpoint which inputs and outputs the cable should plug into on each of these devices. So they're very useful. We have pre-designed ones already out there. If you need something custom, we can build that for you. Fill out the form online or call us at our main number, press option 3, go to our application team, and they will design anything you need. We also have Visio templates available, so if you like to do your own designs in Visio, you can reach out to us and we'll send you the Visio templates as well, so you have those to work with. Okay, with that, brings us to the end of the presentation here. So we'll leave it open to some Q&A. I'll also put up here our phone number as well as the email address. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, send me an email. I'll send you back a Dropbox link to the presentation. Also, if you have questions, you can send them to this link. And don't forget, at the same time, a week from today, we will do a second webinar similar to what you saw today, but it will be part 2 where we'll get into the switches and matrix switches and talk about those, and then you'll see exactly how the pieces we talked about today, the transmitters and receivers, fit in directly with all of our switching products, along with 4K and some of the cool audio breakout features that we have available as well. Bill, do you have any questions that have come through over there? If not, we can unmute people or they can type in, and we can hang out for a few minutes and answer some questions.
Sounds good. Yeah, I've got it open chat window here, so if there's any questions, please type them in and we'll get them answered. There's nothing that's come through yet, but I just want to thank you, Ken. It was awesome. Every time I sit through one of your trainings, it's certainly informative, and I walk away with something. So it was great. Also, just to let everybody know that we will be, I've recorded this session, and just like every other webinar that we do on Tuesday mornings at 10, we will have it posted up to our YouTube channel by the end of the day. We will also be sending out the invite for next week's webinar on Thursday of this week. So look forward Thursday morning. So I'm going to, there are a couple questions that have come through here, so I can read them off to you.
Right.
Can you do 100 CE transmit or Pro 3 HDBaseT out to an HDVS-200 to scale down from 4K to 1080p?
Okay, read that to me one more time.
Okay. I guess, can you take a transmitter or a output from a Pro 3 switch to an HDVS-200 to scale it down from 4K to 1080p?
Yeah, so that's the HDVS receiver they're talking about where the scaler is built into. So you can output to one of those, and you can use the scaler inside of that, yes.
Okay.
Well, let me clarify that. You can use that scaler for anything up to 1920 by 1200 resolution. The scaler that's in the HDVS will not scale 4K.
It'll not take 4K and scale it down to 1080p.
Correct. You need to scale that before. So the our little small scalers, like that's in the HDVS or the SC500, will handle a max resolution of 1920 by 1200. To actually scale 4K resolution, you'd have to use one of the larger CLSO presentation switchers to do that.
Got it.
But it will scale 1080p or 720p or lower.
Okay. Another question came in, clock stretching. I guess, do our extenders do that?
No, so clock stretching is not natively handled in the extenders or in the matrix switcher. However, it is handled in another device we have called the UHD Sync. It's relatively inexpensive. It's less than $150. Maybe, Bill, you can speak to the pricing if anybody has a question on that. But it's a small device called the UHD Sync. It handles anything up to 4K. It will do clock stretching. It'll also fix color space issues, 5-volt issues, HDCP. It'll help with HDCP, identifying issues there. And it will also store EDID. So if you want to learn EDID into it, you can do that as well. So it's a really handy little device. Definitely it's worth keeping on the truck because you never know when you're going to hit one of those clock stretching issues, and this fixes it right away.
Yeah, definitely. That product's been a lifesaver for dealers, both with Atlona products and without. So keeping one of those things handy on the truck will certainly save you a truck roll at some point in your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming through. We'll wait just another minute here. In the meantime, we do stock all the Atlona extenders at all 3 of our branches. So we have them here in Elk Grove, Troy, Michigan, and Carmel, Indiana. So please feel free. If you need product, we can get it shipped out to you right away. And it does not look like we have any other questions. So with that, I guess we'll wrap it up and just say thanks again, Ken. And I want to thank everybody for attending today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us on, Bill. And remember, you guys can send questions anytime they come up to tss@atlona.com. That email goes directly to me and my entire pre-sale support team, all of our engineers and inside people. So if you have a question, you're guaranteed to get an answer if you send it to that address.
Great. Thanks again.
You bet. Take care, guys. Have a great day.